The transport ship floated silently above the desert planet, its metal hull battered and scorched from some unknown attack. Human reconnaissance teams had tracked its trajectory for days. Noticing how it drifted erratically across the outer sectors, they had not expected to find what lay inside. The ship's alarms were dead, its communication systems long disabled, and its once sleek surface was now a maze of dents and scorch marks. When the boarding party breached the hull, they were greeted not by the sounds of machinery or alien soldiers, but by silence aheavy, eerie silence that seemed to press against their ears like a physical weight. Inside the cargo bay, shadows shifted strangely under the flickering emergency lights. Crates were scattered haphazardly, some broken open, revealing alien technology unfamiliar to human eyes. Amid the wreckage, a single figure caught the commander's attention immediately. She was small, barely in her teens, hunched over and chained to a support beam. Her clothes were torn and dirty, her hair matted from what looked like days of neglect. Dust clung to her skin, and faint bruises marred her arms and legs. She had been moving very little, only enough to breathe. Her large eyes flicking nervously at every movement around her. The human team froze. None of them had seen anything like this before in their missions, and the commander's heart sank at the sight. She was not a combatant. She was a child caught in the middle of a war she did not understand. The commander stepped closer, trying to make his presence less threatening. But even from a distance, the alien officer guarding the girl noticed their approach. The officer's posture was rigid, his expression unreadable behind the visor of his helmet. He carried a long, metallic staff-like weapon. She casually tapped against the floor, as if warning the humans to keep their distance. The moment felt suspended in time. The teenager flinched as the weapon struck the ground, her chains rattling slightly. Her eyes darted between the humans and the officer, fear etched so deeply into her face that it spoke louder than any words could. The human commander took a deep breath, knowing that any sudden move could provoke violence. He motioned for his team to hold their positions and slowly stepped forward, speaking in calm, measured tones. "Easy. We're not here to hurt you," he said softly, his voice echoing in the vast metallic bay. The girl's eyes widened at the sound of a human voice, but she did not speak. She merely tightened her grip on the chains, her knuckles white. The alien officer, however, did not seem interested in negotiation. With a sudden, sharp motion, he raised his staff and struck the girl lightly across the shoulder. It was not meant to injure seriously, but it was enough to make her wince and stumble against her chains. The sound of metal scraping, they had not expected such open cruelty. And it became immediately clear to them that this officer had little regard for the girl's well-being. The commander's jaw tightened. He could see the anger simmering in the faces of his soldiers. But he knew that any rash action could escalate into a full-scale conflict with the alien officer. The girl's small form shook, not from fear of him alone, but from exhaustion, hunger, and the sheer weight of her chains. She had been left here for a reason, used as leverage, as some kind of bargaining chip in a larger, darker game. The commander's eyes swept the cargo bay quickly, taking in every detail. Broken containers of supplies, scorch marks on the walls. The eerie hum of damaged equipment, everything spoke of chaos and violence. The officer's posture was tense, as if he were daring the humans to intervene, but his hand remained on the weapon. Time seemed to slow, each second stretching unnaturally long as everyone waited for the next move. The commander's mind raced, thinking about protocol, diplomacy, and the law. Under normal circumstances, he would have had to report this to alien authorities and follow strict procedure. But the moment he saw the girl's eyes wide, terrified, pleading, he realized that protocol meant nothing when someone's life was at stake. He took a careful step closer, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "We're taking her with us," he said firmly. "She is under human protection. No one is allowed to hurt her anymore." His words carried authority, but also empathy, and the girl's eyes flicked toward him. The first sign of trust she had shown since he entered the bay. The alien officer's stance stiffened, the staff now raised slightly higher, signaling defiance. This was no longer a simple rescue mission. It had become a standoff, a test of wills between the human commander and an officer who clearly believed the girl was his to control. The The girl's breathing grew rapid, and her small body shivered in the cold metal bay. The chains dug into her wrists as she tried to shrink away from the tension surrounding her. The commander knelt slightly to meet her eye level, keeping his voice gentle, trying to calm her. "It's okay," he said softly. "You're safe now. We're not going to let anyone hurt you." She flinched at the words, not from fear of him, but from disbelief. It had been so long since anyone had spoken to her with kindness that it felt almost unreal. Meanwhile, the human team began securing the perimeter, moving carefully to avoid provoking the alien officer. Some members readied their non-lethal weapons, not intending to attack, but to create a presence that discouraged further aggression. The commander kept his eyes fixed on the girl, noticing the way she hesitated, torn between instinctive fear and the faintest glimmer of hope. The tension in the air was palpable, every movement echoing against the walls of the cargo bay. The alien officer suddenly spoke, his voice harsh and clipped through his helmet. "She is not yours," he said. "Return her, or face the consequences." His tone was rigid, unyielding, but the commander could hear the faint quiver beneath it, perhaps a hint that this officer was not entirely comfortable with the situation. Still, there was no backing down. The commander straightened, standing between the girl and the officer, his posture firm and unyielding. "I said she is under human protection." "You will not touch her," he replied, his voice leaving no room for argument. For a long moment, no one moved. The hum of the ship's damaged systems filled the silence, punctuated only by the occasional rattle of the girl's chains. She watched, wide-eyed, as the humans slowly moved closer, forming a protective barrier around her. She did not speak, but a tear rolled down her cheek, a silent acknowledgement of the relief that had just begun to seep into her small, exhausted body. The human commander gently reached out, careful not to startle her, and offered her his hand. "Come with us," he said. "You're not alone anymore." The alien officer hesitated, clearly weighing his options. Then, without another word, he lowered his staff slightly, stepping back. It was a small gesture, but it changed everything. The girl's chains were still heavy and cold, but the immediate threat had lessened. The commander nodded to his team, signaling them to begin freeing her. As the locks clicked open, she leaned into the commander's side for support. Still trembling, but beginning to trust the presence of someone willing to protect her at all costs, even as they prepared to leave. The cargo bay. The commander's mind was already racing ahead. This girl was a survivor of something terrible. The officer's actions hinted at a much larger, more dangerous network of secrets. He knew that claiming responsibility for her meant more than just physical protection. It meant becoming her shield against forces far beyond her understanding. Forces that could endanger both human and alien lives. But as he watched her take her first tentative steps under his guidance, he realized that this was a responsibility he would not shy away from. Some things were bigger than protocol, bigger than fear. Some things were about humanity itself. The ship's hangar doors opened, letting in the harsh light of the desert sun. Dust swirled in the air, catching the light in streaks that danced across the commander's face. The girl squinted, unaccustomed to the brightness, but kept close to the commander's side. He led her carefully across the metal floor, mindful of every step, every potential danger. He could feel the tension in her small body, the way her muscles twitched with every noise, every shadow, but he also felt the fragile beginning of trust forming between them, a trust that would be tested in ways neither of them could yet imagine. As they reached the exit, the commander glanced back at the alien officer. He was still standing there, rigid, a silent reminder that this rescue was only the beginning of a long, dangerous journey. But the girl's small hand in his was a quiet, powerful affirmation. She was no longer alone, and in that moment, as the sunlight bathed them in warmth after the cold shadows of the ship, the commander understood something profoundly simple yet vital. Protecting her was no longer a duty, it was a choice, and a choice that would define everything to come. The desert wind hit them the moment they stepped out of the transport ship. Sand swirled around their boots, stinging the skin and making it hard to see far ahead. The sun was harsh, casting long shadows across the barren landscape. The girl blinked rapidly, unaccustomed to the bright light. Her small frame pressed close to the commander, still trembling from the ordeal in the ship. She had never felt warmth and safety in such a sudden way, and though she didn't know how to express it, a flicker of hope was forming in her eyes. The commander looked around carefully. The area was open, and though it seemed empty, he could not let his guard down. They were far from human bases. There was no guarantee that the alien officer, or anyone else with bad intentions, would not return. The first rule in situations like this, he reminded himself, was to establish immediate safety. He motioned to his team, signaling them to form a protective circle around the girl. Each soldier spread out, scanning the horizon for threats. Their weapons were out, but set to non-lethal. This was about intimidation and control, not harming the child. The girl took small, hesitant steps. Her bare feet were sore and dusty, and her chains had left marks on her wrists, now fading but still painful. She looked up at the commander, her eyes full of unspoken questions. He knelt down slightly, meeting her gaze. "You're safe now," he said again. "No one is going to hurt you. I promise." She hesitated, her fingers twitching as if unsure whether to trust him. Slowly she reached out, letting her hand brush against his. It was a small gesture, but in that moment it meant more than words. Behind them, alien officer's presence still lingered like a shadow. Even though he had backed away in the ship, his actions had made it clear that he would not give up easily. The commander knew that claiming the girl publicly meant standing against him and anyone who had orders to control her. It was a dangerous position, one that could escalate quickly. But looking at the girl so small, so fragile, yet still managing to hold her head high despite everything, he made his choice. He would not step back, no matter the consequences. They moved toward a nearby ridge where the terrain was slightly less exposed. The commander instructed his team to set up a temporary perimeter. They dug shallow trenches and used equipment cases to create barriers that could provide cover if necessary. The girl watched everything with wide eyes, fascinated by the efficiency and care of the humans around her. For the first time in days, or maybe weeks, she did not feel like an object in someone else's plan. She felt like she mattered, and the warmth of that feeling was almost overwhelming as they settled. The commander noticed how tense she still was. He knelt in front of her again and gently asked, "Do you remember your name?" The girl hesitated, biting her lip, then whispered, "Lyra." The name was fragile, almost lost in the wind, but it gave the commander something tangible, a thread of identity to hold on to. "Lyra," he repeated softly. "I'm Commander Halen. From now on you're with me, and no one will hurt you. Do you understand?" She nodded slowly, her eyes wet with the beginnings of tears. But there was a tiny spark of trust forming. The sun climbed higher, and the heat became oppressive. Commander Halen instructed his team to ration water carefully and to give Lyra small sips to avoid overwhelming her. She drank hesitantly, her hands shaking as the cool liquid touched her lips. Every action was measured, gentle, and deliberate. Halen knew that rushing her or forcing her into comfort too quickly could frighten her. Trust, he realized, was a slow process, not a command to be issued. As they rested, conversation among the team was hushed. Some of the soldiers voiced concerns about alien retaliation, about breaking protocols, and about the possible consequences of protecting a human child in the custody of alien forces. Halen listened, but did not interrupt. He knew the risks. But his mind was focused solely on Lyra. Rules and orders were secondary when someone's life hung in the balance. Protecting her was no longer a choice. It was a responsibility that demanded courage and clarity. Hours passed, and shadows began to stretch across the desert floor. Lyra had started to move more freely, sitting on a rock with her knees pulled up, watching the humans as they worked. One of the soldiers offered her a small blanket. She wrapped it around herself, her eyes darting nervously at every movement. Halen knelt beside her again and asked softly, "Do you want to tell me what happened in the ship?" She looked away, silent. Her silence was not defiance. It was survival. Some memories were too heavy, too sharp to voice aloud. Halen did not push. Instead, he simply sat with her, letting her know that someone was there, someone who would not leave. As night fell, the desert transformed. The harsh light of the sun was replaced by a sky filled with stars, stretching endlessly overhead. The cold crept in, and the wind howled against the rocks. Hallen instructed the team to light a small campfire, using controlled signals from their portable units. The fire provided warmth, comfort, and a sense of stability. Lyra sat close to the fire, mesmerized by the flickering flames. Hallen told stories not of battles or alien politics, but of simple human life, planets they had explored, of sunsets and rivers. Slowly, the girl began to relax, her small fingers unconsciously playing with the edge of her blanket. But even in this moment of calm, Hallen could not ignore the larger danger. By publicly claiming custody of Lyra, he had made himself a target for those who wanted her returned. The alien officer in the ship had already shown that he would not hesitate to use force. The command structure of the alien forces was opaque and rigid, but Hallen knew enough to understand that the girl represented more than just a single life. She was a key to information, leverage, and secrets that could destabilize fragile interstellar alliances. As the night deepened, Hallen spoke quietly to his second-in-command. "We need a plan. We can't stay here long. If they track us, Lyra's life could be at risk again." Maps were spread across the rocks, and routes were studied, considering terrain, visibility, and possible alien patrols. Every decision had to be precise, every movement deliberate. Hallen felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him, but he also felt a strange clarity. He had never led a rescue like this, but leadership was not about orders, it was about choices. And the choice to protect Lyra was the only one he could make. Around the fire, Lyra finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why? Why did you help me?" Hallen looked at her, noting the raw honesty and vulnerability. "Because no one should be left chained and alone," he said simply. "You deserved better, and I won't let anyone hurt you again." Her eyes glistened with tears, and for the first time she smiled faintly. It was a fragile smile, but it was genuine, and it lit something in the commander's heart, a reminder of why he chose this path. Despite the risks, the night passed slowly. The desert was alive with the sounds of distant creatures and the whisper of the wind across rocks. Hallen kept a watchful eye on Lyra, ensuring she was safe and that the team remained alert. Every sound, every shadow was scrutinized. He realized that protection was not just physical, it was emotional. Lyra needed reassurance, consistency, and patience. Every gentle word, every careful gesture was as important as the weapons and strategy they carried. By dawn, the first light touched the horizon, painting the desert in shades of orange and gold. Lyra sat quietly, watching the sunrise. Hallen knelt beside her, offering her a sip of water and a small piece of dried fruit. "We're going to get you somewhere safe," he promised. She nodded, a tiny spark of hope in her eyes. For the first time since she had been chained, she could imagine a future beyond fear and pain. The humans prepared to move. Hallen's team dismantled the temporary perimeter and readied their transport. Lyra clutched his hand as they walked, her chains now removed, her small steps growing steadier with each passing moment. Hallen glanced around, knowing this was only the beginning. Claiming Lyra was not the end of the story, it was the start of a journey that would test courage, loyalty, and the bonds of trust between species. He felt the weight of the responsibility fully now. But looking at Lyra, alive, safe, and beginning to trust him, he understood something profound. Sometimes, leadership meant standing alone, defying rules, and protecting the innocent when no one else would. And in that moment, he made an unspoken vow to stand by her side, no matter the cost, no matter the danger that lay ahead. The journey to safety was slow. The desert stretched endlessly in every direction, and the transport they had brought was limited in speed and capacity. Lyra walked close to Commander Hallen, her small hand still clutching his. Though the chains were gone, the memories of confinement and fear lingered, making her hesitate at every shadow or unexpected noise. Hallen understood this fully. Trust, once broken, was not easily restored. Every step they took was careful, deliberate, and protective. As they moved, Hallen's team scanned the horizon constantly. The alien officer's earlier actions had made one thing clear: he would not give up. And beyond him, Hallen suspected there were others forces operating in secret, intent on controlling or silencing anyone who could reveal inconvenient truths. Lyra was not just a child in need of care. She was a key to uncovering a larger, dangerous conspiracy. Holland's mind weighed every possibility, every threat, but his focus remained on keeping her safe. The desert was harsh, but the unknown dangers ahead were far harsher. They made camp in a narrow canyon by midday. The rock walls provided some cover from aerial surveillance, and the shadows offered a small measure of comfort against the blinding sun. Lyra sat with her knees pulled to her chest, still quiet and watchful. Hallen knelt beside her, offering small portions of food and water, speaking softly to reassure her. "You're doing well," he said gently. "Every step you take is a step toward freedom. You're stronger than you think." She listened, absorbing his words, though she did not respond immediately. Her eyes reflected a mix of fear, weariness, and curiosity that had survived despite everything that had been done to her. The team worked methodically to make their temporary camp safe. Equipment was checked, sensors calibrated, and escape routes identified in case of sudden attack. Holland's second-in-command, Lieutenant Rhea, approached him quietly. "Commander, if the alien officer reports back, we could be walking into a trap." "There's no guarantee this ends peacefully," she warned. Hallen nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on Lyra. "I know, but leaving her behind is not an option. Our responsibility is clear. We protect her first, and everything else comes after." Rhea studied him for a moment, then nodded, understanding that his decision was absolute. Night fell again, bringing with it a chilling cold that seeped into bones. The desert had transformed into an alien world of shadows and stars. Hallen made sure Lyra was warm, wrapping her in blankets and ensuring the fire's glow reached her. The girl finally spoke, her voice barely audible. "Why me?" she asked, her eyes wide with both fear and wonder. Hallen shook his head gently, kneeling to meet her gaze. "Because no one should be left alone, chained and afraid. You deserved protection, and I won't let anyone take that away from you." She looked down at her hands, tracing invisible lines in the dust, absorbing the sincerity in his words. For the first time since the ship, she felt something resembling safety. The next day, as the sun rose over the desert, Holland decided it was time to learn more about Lyra's past. He carefully asked her about her life before she was captured. She hesitated, glancing at the horizon as if measuring how much she could reveal. Slowly, she spoke. Her words were halting, but they painted a picture of a small human colony hidden far from the major interstellar routes. The colony had been peaceful, self-sufficient, and largely unknown to both human and alien authorities. Lyra's family and friends had lived quiet lives, until the day an attack had changed everything. Her voice trembled as she described the raid. How unknown forces had stormed the colony, taking children and adults alike. Some had been taken aboard alien ships, others disappeared entirely. Lyra herself had been chained and transported on the ship they had found, used as leverage in a larger secretive conflict. Hallen listened in silence, his heart heavy. He realized that protecting Lyra was about far more than keeping a child safe. It was about standing against a network of hidden threats that had already destroyed countless lives. He made a careful decision. They needed more information. If Lyra could identify who had attacked her colony, they could prevent further atrocities. But Hallen also knew they had to be cautious. The alien officer and his superiors could be watching, waiting for any sign of exposure. Trusting the wrong person could lead to disaster. Hallen assigned a small reconnaissance team to gather intelligence discreetly while he stayed with Lyra, ensuring her safety and slowly helping her regain confidence in humans. Over the next few days, Lyra began to open up more. She shared small stories of her life before the attack, the way her colony celebrated festivals, the games she played with her friends, and the kindness of neighbors who had cared for one another. These memories, though bittersweet, gave her a sense of identity that the chains had tried to erase. Hallen encouraged her to speak freely, to remember who she was, and to understand that she had value and agency. With each story, her posture grew stronger, her eyes brighter. The commander could see hope slowly replacing fear, fragile yet powerful transformation. One evening, as the stars filled the sky once more, Hallen gathered his team and spoke quietly. "We cannot stay hidden forever. We need a safe location. Somewhere the girl can be protected, and where we can uncover the truth about what happened to her colony." The team discussed options, weighing the risks of exposure against the need for security. Finally, they agreed to head toward a human research outpost several sectors away, a location well hidden and equipped to handle both protection and investigation. As they prepared to move, Lyra hesitated. She had grown used to the small comforts of the temporary camps, to the warmth of the fire, and to the steady presence of Hallen and his team. But the commander knelt beside her, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "I know it's scary," he said softly. "But moving forward is how we keep you safe. We will face the dangers together, and we will not let anyone hurt you again." Lyra nodded slowly, her fear tempered by the trust she had begun to place in him. Together, they set out once more, leaving the canyon behind. The journey was not easy. The terrain grew rougher, with jagged rocks and narrow passes that slowed their progress. The team maintained strict vigilance, scanning for any signs of pursuit or danger. Lyra stayed close to Hallen, sometimes holding his hand, other times walking slightly behind to observe and learn. Hallen spoke gently, teaching her small survival skills, how to watch for sudden movements, how to listen for danger, and how to stay calm even when fear threatened to overwhelm her. Each lesson was subtle, yet it instilled confidence and awareness in the girl who had once been powerless. During one quiet moment, Lyra asked, "Do you think they will come for me again?" Hallen considered the question carefully. "They might try," he said honestly, "but we will be ready, and you will not face them alone. We will stand together, and that is stronger than any chain they can put on you." She looked at him, absorbing the weight of his words. For the first time, she felt a sense of agency. She was not simply a victim. She was a survivor, guided by someone who respected her courage and her life. Days passed, and the bond between Lyra and Hallen grew stronger. She began to speak more freely, asking questions about human life, about the wider galaxy, and about the missions that brought soldiers like Hallen into dangerous territories. He answered patiently, carefully shaping her understanding while ensuring she remained grounded and safe. She learned to laugh quietly again, to notice beauty in the small things, a flower growing through cracks in the rocks, the sound of distant water, the play of sunlight on metal. Slowly, she was reclaiming pieces of her childhood that had been taken from her. Finally, after several tense days, they reached the outskirts of the research outpost. Security protocols ensured no one could follow them unnoticed. The team guided Lyra through the gates, introducing her to a place where she could rest, recover, and begin to understand the truth about her past. Hallen stayed by her side, knowing that the journey was far from over. While they had escaped immediate danger, the web of secrets surrounding her capture was only beginning to unravel. That night, as Lyra slept under proper blankets for the first time in weeks, Hallen reflected on the journey. Claiming her had been more than a duty, it had been a choice of morality, courage, and compassion. The dangers ahead were real and unpredictable, but he felt a quiet determination. She had survived chains, fear, and isolation. Now, together, they would uncover the truth and ensure that no one would suffer as she had. The research outpost was quiet, almost eerily so, as the team moved Lyra inside. The building was designed to be secure, with reinforced walls, scanning equipment, and restricted access points. Hallen knew that the outpost would provide a temporary haven, but it was not a permanent solution. There were forces still looking for Lyra, and they could appear at any moment. The corridors smelled faintly of metal and antiseptic, a sterile environment that was strange and unsettling to the young girl. Yet, for the first time in days, she felt the possibility of safety. As they settled her into a small private room, Hallen noticed how she lingered near the door, hesitant to relax. Her eyes were wide, scanning every shadow, every noise, as if danger could appear from nowhere. Hallen knelt beside her bed, his voice calm and steady. "You're safe here," he said softly. "No one can reach you. You don't have to be afraid." She bit her lip, unsure whether to trust him fully. But the warmth in his voice made her hesitate before stepping closer to the bed. Slowly, she sat down, hugging her knees to her chest. As if holding herself together from the inside out, Halen called a small meeting with his team. "We need to prepare for every possibility," he said. "The alien officer won't give up easily, and there are likely others involved. If they try to take her, we must be ready. But we also have to be careful. This is not a battle to fight recklessly." The team nodded, understanding the stakes. Every precaution was necessary. They checked every entrance, set up surveillance devices, and positioned themselves strategically around the outpost. Meanwhile, Lyra began to explore the room cautiously. It was small, but it had clean sheets, a warm blanket, and a window that looked out onto the surrounding landscape. She approached the window slowly, peering out at the world beyond. For the first time, she saw the desert bathed in sunlight, stretching endlessly with mountains in the distance. It was beautiful, but it also reminded her of the dangers she had escaped. Halen followed her silently, letting her take the first steps toward feeling comfortable. He understood that her trust could not be rushed. It had to be earned slowly, with patience and consistency. Over the next several days, the outpost became both a sanctuary and a place of preparation. Halen worked with Lyra to help her regain confidence, teaching her basic self-defense strategies, emergency signals, and ways to stay calm under pressure. She listened carefully, absorbing every word. But she also began to ask questions about the human military, about alien protocols, and about her own past. Halen answered as honestly as he could without overwhelming her, carefully shaping her understanding of the complex world she had been thrust into. Then, one evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a faint alarm echoed through the outpost. Halen's heart tightened instantly. He signaled for silence, scanning the area through surveillance monitors. The alien officer they had encountered days earlier was approaching, accompanied by a small contingent. They moved cautiously, using the terrain to their advantage, unaware that Halen's team had anticipated their approach. The commander's mind raced. This was the test he had feared. The officer had not forgotten Lyra, and now he was coming to claim her. Halen moved quickly, coordinating his team with precision. "Positions," he whispered. "Stay calm. Don't provoke them unless necessary. Our priority is the girl." Lyra watched from her room, her small hands gripping the blanket tightly. Halen knelt beside her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Stay here," he said softly. "Trust me. We're going to handle this together." She nodded, her eyes wide but determined. She had learned in the past days that Halen's words were not empty promises. He had protected her every step of the way. Now she would rely on that trust completely. The first confrontation began at the outer perimeter. The alien officer and his team approached cautiously, unaware of the human positions. Halen's team held back, using non-lethal methods to delay and distract, forcing the officer to make choices under pressure. The tension was thick, almost palpable, as both sides evaluated each other. Halen knew that any misstep could escalate into open conflict, and yet he had to act decisively to protect Lyra. His mind moved quickly, weighing strategy, potential outcomes, and the need to maintain control without unnecessary violence. The alien officer suddenly spoke. His voice amplified across the sensors. "You have no right to keep her," he said, his tone both commanding and desperate. Halen stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "She is under human protection. Your actions do not give you authority over her. You will leave now." There was a long pause, as if the officer weighed the consequences of disobedience. Then, with a frustrated gesture, he signaled his team to retreat slightly, testing the human's response. Halen remained steady, his gaze fixed on the approaching force, ready to act if necessary. Inside the outpost, Lyra watched the monitors with a mix of fear and fascination. She realized more than ever that she was not powerless. She had allies, and those allies were prepared to stand between her and danger. Halen glanced at her briefly, giving a small nod, a silent reminder that she was not alone. The connection between them had grown stronger in the days since her rescue, and now it served as a source of courage for both. The standoff continued through the night. With careful maneuvers on both sides, Holland's team managed to delay the alien forces using intelligence and strategy rather than brute force. Every move was calculated, every decision aimed at protecting the girl while avoiding unnecessary escalation. Lyra, observing quietly, began to understand the stakes and the bravery required to confront danger. She had survived chains, fear, and isolation, and now she was witnessing the lengths people would go to ensure her safety. As dawn approached, Hallen realized that the situation could not remain static. The officer would return with reinforcements, and the outpost, despite its security, could be compromised. He made a decisive call. "We move her," he said quietly. "Now, take her to the secure transport and follow the escape route we prepared. We'll cover her." Lyra's eyes widened, a mixture of fear and understanding crossing her face. Hallen knelt beside her, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "It's okay," he whispered. "We've prepared for this. Trust me, you are not alone." The move was swift and precise. Lyra was escorted to the transport under the cover of strategic distractions, her small frame shielded by Holland's team. The alien officer attempted to intercept, but Hallen and his soldiers created barriers and delays, forcing him to retreat once more. The tension was intense, but the careful planning and trust between the human team allowed them to maintain control. For Lyra, each step taken was a step toward freedom, toward safety, and toward reclaiming a sense of agency she had not felt in weeks. Finally, as the first light of morning bathed the desert, Lyra was safely inside the transport. Hallen took a moment to ensure she was comfortable, adjusting her blanket and giving her a sip of water. She looked at him, her eyes reflecting both exhaustion and a fragile sense of relief. "Thank you," she whispered. Hallen smiled gently, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to thank me," he said softly. "You've been incredibly brave. That's all the thanks anyone needs." As the transport lifted off, leaving the outpost behind, Hallen allowed himself a quiet moment to reflect. Claiming Lyra had put him against rules, authority, and a powerful alien officer. But it had also revealed something vital: courage, trust, and compassion could overcome fear and danger. He knew that the journey ahead was far from over, but for now, Lyra was safe. And that safety, hard-won and fragile, was worth every risk taken, every decision made, and every challenge faced. The desert below stretched endlessly. But within the transport, a quiet determination filled the air. Lyra sat close to Hallen, her small hand still holding his. She had begun to understand that her life was no longer dictated by fear or chains. She had allies who would stand with her and a path forward that could be shaped by her choices. Hallen, watching her closely, knew that this moment, the decision to protect her, to claim responsibility, and to confront danger head-on would define everything to come. The journey continued, each mile bringing them closer to a place of safety, but also closer to the truth that awaited. Lyra's past, the conspiracy that had captured her, and the forces that still sought to control her life were not yet fully revealed. Hallen understood that this was only the beginning of a larger story, one that would test courage, strategy, and the unbreakable bond forming between a protector and a survivor. The transport moved steadily through the thin atmosphere of the desert planet, leaving the outpost and the confrontation behind. Lyra sat quietly, her small hands folded in her lap, her eyes staring out the window at the endless expanse of desert. For the first time since her capture, she felt a glimmer of relief. The immediate danger had passed, but the journey to safety was far from over. Commander Hallen sat beside her, his gaze alert on the monitors and the surrounding area. Yet he allowed himself to relax slightly, knowing that, for now, she was out of reach from those who had sought to harm her. Holland's team had grown closer during the journey. Each member had seen the courage in Lyra, the resilience that had carried her through captivity, and the determination that refused to be broken. They had also seen Holland's unwavering commitment to her safety, the way he had taken responsibility without hesitation, the careful, deliberate manner in which he had guided her through danger. Trust had been earned, and it had been tested repeatedly. But it had also strengthened the bond between them. As the transport approached a secure human research station on a distant, protected planet, Hallen prepared for the next phase. This facility was designed to be both a refuge and a place of investigation. Lyra would be safe, but it would also allow the team to uncover the truth about the forces that had captured her. Hallen knew that understanding the bigger picture was essential. The alien officer and his superiors had acted under orders, but the origins of those orders, the motivations behind them, and the identities of those involved remained hidden. Lyra was more than a survivor. She was a key to revealing secrets that could affect countless lives. Upon arrival at the research station, Lyra was escorted to a secure suite. The room was small but comfortable, equipped with basic necessities, a bed with clean sheets, and a window overlooking a small garden within the station. Hallen knelt beside her, ensuring she felt safe and cared for. "We've made it," he said softly. "You're safe now, Lyra. No one can harm you here." She looked up at him, her eyes reflecting a mixture of exhaustion, relief, and the beginnings of trust. For the first time, she allowed herself to relax, even slightly, and let go of the tension that had gripped her since her capture. The days at the station were carefully structured. Lyra received proper food, medical attention, and psychological support. Hallen and his team worked with specialists to help her process her experiences. She'd understand her past and regain a sense of agency. She was encouraged to speak about her memories, both painful and joyful, and to begin rebuilding a sense of normalcy. The process was slow, but progress was evident. Lyra began to smile more frequently, to ask questions, and to express her thoughts. She was learning that she was not defined by fear, captivity, or the actions of those who had sought to control her. During this time, investigations into her capture intensified. Hallen coordinated with intelligence officers, analysts, and legal teams to trace the origins of the alien operation that had targeted her colony. Evidence was gathered from ship logs, intercepted communications, and testimony from witnesses, both human and alien. It became clear that the attack on Lyra's colony had been part of a larger conspiracy, aimed at controlling strategic locations and eliminating potential threats. The alien officer's actions had been sanctioned by those in positions of power, but the investigation revealed layers of deception, corruption, and secrecy that extended far beyond a single incident as the evidence mounted. Hallen and his team ensured that Lyra remained shielded from political pressures and external interference. She was no longer a powerless child. She was a witness and a survivor, whose safety and well-being were paramount. Hallen understood that protecting her meant more than physical security. It meant ensuring she was treated with dignity, that her voice was heard, and that her rights were respected. Lyra's experiences were taken seriously. Her testimony played a crucial role in holding those responsible accountable. Eventually, the alien officer was summoned for a formal hearing. He was confronted with the evidence of his actions and the wider conspiracy he had been a part of. Hallen attended the proceedings, remaining close to Lyra to provide reassurance. The officer attempted to defend his actions, citing orders and duty, but the overwhelming evidence, combined with the courage of Lyra and the meticulous preparation of Hallen's team, left little room for evasion. The hearing concluded with the officer being held accountable, and the wider conspiracy exposed to interstellar authorities, ensuring that such actions could not be repeated. Through this process, Lyra began to understand the significance of what had happened. Her voice mattered, her experiences were valid, and her courage had directly contributed to justice being served. Hallen watched as she grew stronger, more confident, and increasingly aware of her own resilience. He had chosen to protect her, to claim responsibility for her safety, and in doing so, he had not only saved a life, but had helped dismantle a system of corruption that had endangered many others. Over time, as the bond between Hallen and Lyra evolved, it was built on trust, care, and mutual respect. Hallen became her guardian in every sense, providing guidance, protection, and support. He never treated her as a possession. Instead, He treated her as someone whose life and choices mattered deeply. Lyra, in turn, began to rely on him, not out of dependence alone, but out of trust and understanding. She learned that being protected did not mean being powerless. It meant having someone stand by her while she reclaimed her strength and agency. Months passed, and the research station became a place of healing, growth, and learning. Lyra engaged in educational programs, participated in creative projects, and formed bonds with other residents of the station. She began to explore interests she had long been denied the opportunity to pursue, discovering talents, curiosity, and joy in simple activities. Hallen continued to guide her, supporting her decisions and encouraging her independence. The chains of her past were gone, replaced by the freedom to grow, explore, and shape her own life. Eventually, Lyra was invited to participate in interstellar forums and councils. Sharing her experiences and insights to prevent future injustices, she spoke with courage, clarity, and empathy, representing not only her own survival, but the voices of countless others who had been silenced. Hallen watched proudly as she stepped into her role, knowing that the journey had been long, difficult, and filled with uncertainty, yet through it all, they had navigated danger, confronted corruption, and forged a bond that could withstand the challenges of the galaxy. In quiet moments, Hallen and Lyra would reflect on the journey that had brought them together. They spoke of the desert, the ship, the alien officer, and the choices that had defined their path. Lyra often remarked on the courage it had taken for Hallen to claim her, to stand against forces that sought to control her life. Hallen, in turn, reminded her that her bravery had been equally essential. She had survived, adapted, and learned to trust again. Their bond was a testament to resilience, compassion, and the power of standing up for what is right. Years later, Lyra became a respected voice in interstellar governance. Known for her wisdom, courage, and dedication to justice, Hallen remained by her side, not as a constant protector, but as a mentor, supporter, and friend. Together, they had faced unimaginable challenges, navigated dangerous conflicts, and emerged stronger. The decision to protect her, to claim responsibility for her life, had created a legacy of courage, integrity, and hope that extended far beyond their immediate circumstances. And in the quiet moments, when the galaxy seemed vast and uncertain, Lyra would remember the chains, the fear, and the despair she had endured, and she would also remember the unwavering presence of Commander Hallen, who had stepped forward when it mattered most. What began as an act of protection had grown into a lifelong bond of trust, justice, and chosen family, a bond that neither chains, danger, nor time could ever break.